Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. On the After the Primary wrap-up, we're going to have the panel for the full time, and I want to get right into it with Mike Kelly, the Kelly Group, KMOX, everything else. It's too long to mention. Welcome back.
Glad to be here.
Mindy Mazer, GPS Impact, probably now I'd say one of the top Democrat operatives in the state, right? If it's happening, you know about it, right?
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be back.
Very glad to have you here. Jack Spooner, Republican operative, attorney here in St. Louis, all around citizen of the world. Glad to have you, sir.
Thanks.
Mayor Clayton. Ryan Johnson, executive director of the Missouri Alliance for Freedom. I was so glad before the primary that you agreed to be over here today and be on the show. I am more thrilled with how the primary went. What does a conservative do now?
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for having me. I think it's interesting to note that about 450,000 Republicans voted against Eric Greitens the other night, 65% of the vote. You know, he has a lot of work to do in order to try to unify this party. If he wants to reach out to conservatives, I think that he needs to start doing it now. And so far, I've seen very little since election night.
If you're a conservative, I mean, you have to pick, right? It's not a choice where you can write in William F. Buckley.
Sure.
Conservatives have a natural home, and is it with Chris Koster?
Well, it's an interesting election cycle. I mean, Chris used to be my Cass County prosecutor. He was my Republican state senator. I know Chris. I know what to expect for Chris. I know what Chris is wrong on. I know what Chris is right on. And Chris is an extremely formidable candidate for any Republican to take on, let alone someone with Eric Greitens' background. So I think it's going to be a tough election cycle. You have a Republican who used to be a Democrat that now claims to be a conservative outsider, but behaves very much like an inside player. And then you have Chris Koster, who is the ultimate political insider, used to be a Republican, and now is running as a conservative Democrat, reaching out to the gun crowd, reaching out to the agricultural community. Both of them were at the Democratic National Convention in 2008. We are in a very unique general election like I've never seen.
Jack Spooner, wow. You help the Missouri Republican Party quite a bit. This has got to be a tough draw. I mean, where do you stick with the one that's a Republican today? What do you do?
Well, I don't think it's a tough draw. You stick with a Republican no matter what.
Koster or Greitens?
No, look, Greitens, Eric's new to politics, and Eric needs to.
Well, I don't think you can be new to politics. You've been in the White House 5 times in the Democratic National Convention.
That's so much different. When you're running a campaign, you're getting involved in a race, you're constantly learning and you're constantly reinventing yourself, and you change positions when you don't have a voting record or anything to look at. And as Ryan said, he needs to reach out. He needs to bridge the gap between the Southwest Missouri Republicans, the conservative Republicans. He's got to let them know that he's going to be there for them.
Let me ask you a question. You work with Todd Richardson, Mike Searpoy, Senator Richards, Senator Kehoe. Do you agree with the nominee that they're corrupt insiders that should be thrown down the steps?
No, they're not corrupt. They're not. The corruption isn't the individuals. The corruption is the system. It's what we have in Jeff City that is broken. The system's broken. Jeff City and Washington, D.C., the broken systems need to be fixed. So when someone says something's corrupt, that's how I view it. I don't look at it as a people.
Mike Kelly, Eric Greitens, go.
Well, this is fun. I mean, look, I would push you just let these guys keep talking. I mean, we have a national narrative that is pervasive in Missouri, and the person who ought to be the most scared is Roy Blunt. Here's what's going on. You have Donald Trump, who's essentially taken the Republican Party hostage, and now we're watching Eric Greitens do it. This past Thursday, we were supposed to see the unity meeting of the Republican Party. It didn't happen. This party is in disarray. They've caused this to happen to themselves, and the fact that they have Eric Greitens, I'm so glad we're going to come out guns a-blazing to take him.
You know, a lot of people know that I'm a big Muppets fan, and so I cannot get past Eric Greitens' ad when he is blowing stuff up. You know, he wants to blow up government. He's blown up the Republican Party. So yeah, maybe it cut through, but I just keep thinking of, remember that Muppet, Crazy Harry, and he's the one who's always like blowing up stuff in the Muppets? And I'm like, you know, it's entertaining and it gets your attention, but nobody wants Crazy Harry to be their governor.
Actually, the Missouri Republican Party does. So, I mean,
well, I don't think that's true. The majority of Republican primary voters did not vote for Greitens.
That's fallacy. Come on, look.
But here's
all you
the
need
reality
to do
of what we face, though, Jack. The Democrats have controlled the governor's office for 20 of the last 24 years. You've nominated a candidate who is a character of himself. It looks like a Saturday Night Live skit. Let me tell you, to win elections, there are more Democrats in this state than Republicans. We just happen to be packed in 2 areas. To win elections, you have to be able to move back to the middle. How do you do that when you first started with an AR-15, then went to a machine gun, then went to a howitzer, and then taking on your own party? I'm telling you right now, him showing up in Jefferson City would be a disaster for the Republicans because they're not going to work with him.
Oh, they will. They will. It all comes together. This isn't new. Every election cycle has the same basic situation where someone's
I
going to
don't
start in the
recall
end and
this
come
with
to the
Dave
middle.
Spence, Kenny Holsoff, Matt Blunt. I don't recall this with Jim Talent, Margaret Kelly. I don't.
Well, you also have to look at who their primary opponents were, or that there weren't any. So if you have to go through a contested primary, it changes the nature of the cycle.
I was a big Sarah Stillman fan, and when Kenny Holsoff won, he won.
Well, look, Greitens had to get 32% of the vote to win. He ended up with 35% of the vote. That's just the way the system is when you have 4 people. So it's like saying, when people would say, well, Tony La Russa is the winningest manager, but he has the most losses of any manager. Well, you don't concentrate on the losses. If you're going to play that many games, you're going to have more losses than everyone else, but what you're looking at is the victory. That's what you're looking at, the total
Let's talk
victory.
about Chris Koster for a minute. Mindy, is there a concern here? It looks as though Eric Greitens, when the Post-Dispatch criticizes your ad, it usually means it's outstanding. And his ads were very effective. I thought when everybody was rolling their eyes, they were racking up votes. Is there a sense that Chris Koster takes this job seriously and will run a campaign off statistics and things like that, and Eric Greitens will just blow things up? And in this situation, does he not run the risk of taking this too seriously?
I don't know about that. I know that Chris Koster is a very good leader, a very smart and sophisticated leader for our state,
and somebody who's time though.
Well, yes, I think it is. I think it always is when you're talking about managing and running campaigns that are effective. With Eric Greitens, I think the thing you really want to look at is his out-of-state donors, and some of these donors, we're not really sure who they are. Some of them have some serious allegations against them. And at a time when he's saying that he's going to be a reformer and he's running against all these so-called career politicians, he is taking the system to a whole new level in terms of obscuring who is funding his campaign. And so I think that's going to be a real dynamic in the race. Like, are you really a reformer, or are you not really going to be transparent?
Like Kelly, John Lamping, a career politician. Is Roy Blunt, is Sarah Stillman a career politician?
Sure.
I guess. I mean, if John Bruner's a career politician, now Eric Greitens is a career politician, right?
Well, it's still too soon to call, but we're still missing the point here.
Well, let's not leave out the biggest career politician in the room, and that would be Chris Koster. Yeah. I mean, the man has been in government for the better part of his life. I mean, and I get that you like him now, and I get that he's your guy. He used to be ours. We really liked him. We understand how a lot of his former girlfriends feel, and maybe someday you will too. Chris Koster, for all of his faults and all of his gifts, is a political opportunist without a moral compass, and to suggest that he's any more of a Democrat now than he was a Republican then is outlandish.
Have 2 people who are leading your ticket, Donald Trump and Eric Greitens, who don't have policies. You know, you talked about what do the voters want? Now, in the Republican Party, apparently they have this freaky fetish with guns and some weird stuff going on that they got to blow stuff up to attract to their voters and play to the lowest common denominator. But people want real solutions.
65% of our party did not respond to those outlandish ads.
We have infrastructure that's crumbling. We have education that's leaving people behind. We're having an impossible way to attract businesses here because we don't have the infrastructure that would allow them to come. People want real solutions, and when real voters show up in November, the votes will pile up on those who are offering solutions, and that's going to be Chris Koster.
And that is a real distinction between Chris Koster and Eric Greitens, I think, because he does have plans and he does have a record.
Is his concern, though, that he has these plans? He does have policies. Eric Greitens probably hasn't been very forthcoming what he's going to do if he's governor.
No, Eric Greitens
Do you worry that the electorate's not interested in that and Chris Koster's going to be too serious about this?
No, I'm not worried about that one bit. I think at the end of the day, Mike is absolutely right, and voters care about jobs and the economy, and Chris Koster is going to have a plan for that, and Eric Greitens is going to treat running the state like it's a Call of Duty video game.
Well, Ryan, this is an interesting thing. Eric Greitens made a big part of his campaign that everyone in Jeff City is corrupt. It's a corrupt system. However, he took a $1.9 million in dirty money that we'll never know who it was from. Probably the most single unethical act in Missouri political history. Do you think anybody wants to be lectured about ethics from Eric Greitens?
You know, I think there's real merit to Carl Bearden's ethics
Yeah.
complaint. And you know, I think that the system should play out, and they should look into it. I think that they will. You know, I think it's a.
Do you think it's an ethical thing
I
to
think
do
it was
to
a
take
strategic
secret
and a
money?
tactical error on his part. Absolutely. I mean, to base your entire campaign essentially on reforming Jefferson City and taking out corruption, presumably with a machine gun or cannon of some sort, and then to play right into their hands. And of course, you see right out of the gate, the Democrats very ably file 3 ethics complaints the next day, presumably. I mean, they're attacking what is, for all intents and purposes, his strength, or was his strength, and he's taken it away. And I think, at minimum, it was a tactical error on his part.
Jack Spooner, the leadership at Jeff City, I know Greitens has reached out to them and had some very good conversations, actually. Do you think they just endorse him and kind of tacitly admit they're corrupt?
No, the endorsement doesn't tacitly admit they're corrupt. The system, well, we all can agree Jefferson City is broken. Washington, D.C. is broken. We all talk about change. Obama ran change, change, change. You don't get change.
Dark money to change?
No, you don't get
change.
change when you put the same people in, like a Koster or like a Clinton. You want some change, you got a chance for it by putting in people like Trump and Greitens. And let's see what happens.
But Jack, Eric Greitens didn't run against Jay Nixon. He didn't run saying what he was going to do to fix the governor's office. He ran against the Missouri legislature. And the last time I checked, we could put all the Democrats in one minivan to show up there. It is a Republican-controlled organization. He directly took on his own party. This man is not someone who's, one, going to be able to unite the party. The fact that you're sitting here spinning around trying to find some way to defend him is the perfect case study for that.
No, not sitting here spinning and trying to find some way to defend him. He went through a contested 4-way primary. It's completely different than the general election. Let him move into the general election cycle, and let's see what he has to say. You're going to like what he has to say when you hear his policies, when you hear what he's going to do. Give him a chance.
Do you think he's going to go back to his positions of like 2008? Because maybe, we could listen to some of those.
Like I said,
Well, do you think Chris Koster will do the same?
yeah.
Or
Well,
2007, I should
no,
say.
wait,
Could they make a fair point that-
there's a distinction there, and here's the distinction. Chris Koster hasn't changed his positions. He did change his party, but he has a moral compass in terms of where he stands on the issues.
On
I would disagree
abortion,
with
he's
that.
become more pro-choice. Other than that, I don't know what Chris Koster's positions have changed, except on the position of abortion. I think Chris Koster's more pro-choice. We got it, but let's keep the same energy, same level. We'll come right back. We'll do predictions and talk about the rest of the statewide ballot when we return. But we will leave you with this week's leading Missouri economic indicators.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. We're bringing you the panel talking about this prior week's primary elections, which were most interesting we've ever seen. Mindy, we were just discussing. Let's talk about predictions here. Let's start with the legislative leadership. Did they just throw in and endorse him? Is that an admission that they might be corrupt?
Well, clearly.
Maybe Grimes was right.
Well, I mean, I don't think you can put all of the different elected officials in the same category
I
of
agree
corrupt
with you.
or not corrupt. But I think at the end of the day, Eric Greitens is going to have a lot of work to do to repair some of the damage he's done within the Republican Party if he wants to run as a Republican.
Mike Kelly, I'll be the person. I think the legislative majority in Jeff City does a good job. I think they've balanced budgets. I think they've made some very good progress. I think Missourians are very happy with their legislative leadership because they keep not only re-electing them, they elect more. I disagree with you and Eric Greitens.
With me?
Yeah.
You disagree with me? No, Eric Greitens and I have never been on the same page on
You both
anything
aren't
except
fans
for
of Jeff City.
2008 when he and I were at Barack Obama's convention together.
Well, you both don't like legislative leadership in Jeff City, right?
Well, I
It's
don't like
corrupt.
the Republican legislative leadership in Jefferson City, and I think they need to be held accountable for the fact that they're not reforming the system that is causing these problems. But look, I think
Do
these
they endorse
Republican
him?
leaders do the same thing that's happening nationally. You've got a circus on your hands. And both Donald Trump and Eric Greitens, they're going to say, oh, yeah, we're with them, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to have to play the same game of being janitor and trying to clean up the mess behind them and hope to goodness they don't get their clocks cleaned because they have two flawed candidates leaving their tickets.
Jack Spooner, at the end of the day, the legislative leadership just swallows their pride and those in, right? They just come along.
They swallow their pride. Look, Democrats are great at throwing around adjectives and describing things and attacking people. And when you do that, you're not attacking addressing the points and the issues. You want to talk about Greitens' policies and what they are, that's legitimate. But when you start making comparisons to the circus and things, it doesn't mean anything.
He never talked about one policy. He blew stuff up. He did push-ups and talked about how there's corruption in Jeff City, which is the Republican Party. What does he stand for? Tell me.
That was a contested primary. It's completely
What does
different
he
than the
stand
general
for?
election.
Ryan, let me just ask you.
To suggest that the conservative movement or the Republican Party is bereft of ideas simply because of two people is largely unfair. I imagine that coming from a Democratic operative. So we believe in things like limited government, like individual freedom. We believe in things like right to work and all the things that you don't stand for. So those ideas are continuing to be advanced at other levels.
But Ryan, that's
so
a direct
for
contrast.
instance,
When you say that you believe in limited government, isn't right to work a regulation on business?
So if you would
Yes.
let me finish, we had a fairly good night at other levels for conservatives with Josh Hawley, with Mr. Ashcroft, with the removal of Republican incumbents who voted against conservatism and voted against the party. In Ann Zer's loss, Labor's hand-picked candidate lost a very close race, as you know.
Let's talk one thing about legislative leadership, though. Do they throw in and go along with the party?
I think that some will, and I think that others won't. I mean, we are not a party, obviously, that marches in lockstep right now, and I don't think that we should be. I think that is I think that takes away from the movement that is conservatism.
And there's a lot of ideas being done in Jeff City. I think just to lump in people in the legislative leadership and what they've accomplished as ineffective or corrupt is wrong. I think there's a lot of good they've done and a lot of good people that have served and previously served that are not corrupt.
Well, John Lamping, no slouch when it comes to policy, is 110% behind Eric Greitens, and even though he and I disagreed
Do you
in the
believe he's
primary,
corrupt?
John Lamping is as good a man as I've ever
I
met who's served in public office. I wish he was still there. He supports Eric Greitens, and if Eric Greitens as governor implements John Lamping's ideas, that'll be a good thing for Missouri.
Let's talk, last point on this, let's talk about some of the groups that are probably having awkward meetings this week. Missouri Right to Life, they were actually opposed to Eric Greitens. Did they throw in and support him?
I would be the last person to tell you what that wing of the Republican Party is about.
What do you think? NRA, Missouri Right to Life, do they endorse the Republican, or what happens?
I think at the
Tough
end
call.
of the day, a lot of those groups right now are basically Republican groups, and if there's a R behind the name, that's where they're going to be.
Jack Spooner, do those groups come and endorse? Does Farm Bureau come in?
Some may not. I think the ones that don't will just remain silent.
That's what I think. Ryan Johnson, you work with a lot of these groups. Farm Bureau, they endorse the Republican or they endorse Koster?
I think it's still a question mark.
What about the NRA?
NRA, Chris Koster has a very strong case to make.
I predict maybe Missouri Farm Bureau endorses the Republican. I think it already may be Koster. What about the Missouri Alliance for Freedom?
Well, we don't endorse. But what I will say in terms of the conservative groups, a lot of them are ideologically driven. So for instance, for many, like Missouri Right to Life, it might very well be about principle instead of politics. So just because the person has an R behind their name doesn't exactly mean that they will automatically lockstep fall in line. I'm not the kind of guy that's built like that. I don't just fall in line. You need to earn my vote. Eric Greitens has a rally sign right now that says "Earn it." Well, he needs to earn my vote yet.
Hey, Kenny.
He's
a very talented guy. Clearly, he's got the potential to pull
I
it
think
together.
he can, but he purposefully ignored groups like ours and Missouri Right to Life and other groups like ours during the primary. That was part of his strategy. It obviously worked for him. But now if he wants to win the general, he needs to unite his base. And I don't see him winning a general election without unifying his base. And he needs to move now in order to do so.
Let's talk about the rest of the ballot, Mike Kelly. Teresa Hensley pulled what I think most folks consider a come from behind upset win. She seems like the better general election candidate. The question was the primary. She seems like she's in a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely, especially in an election where 54% of the people who show up to vote in Missouri are going to be female. This is a strong case for Teresa Hensley to make, and she's the only prosecutor running in the race.
Does she benefit, Mindy, from Hillary Clinton? There should be some bump, right? I think we saw in different elections when the top of the ticket has when Barack Obama brought in a lot of African American votes. Does the women vote rise in Missouri because Hillary Clinton's at the top of the ticket?
I think there'll be a lot of women who are energized by Hillary Clinton being at the top of the ticket, and I think there's going to be some dads with daughters who are too. And so for the 3 women who are running statewide, maybe they'll get a little bit of an extra bump with that. But I do think Hensley is well positioned to be the first woman Attorney General from Missouri.
Let's talk Josh Hawley for a minute. I mean, I think he had a similar process, followed in a little bit of the Greitens thing of saying folks in Jeff City were corrupt. Huge win. I mean, I think by the end of the campaign, some folks were expecting a win, but the margin had to be surprising.
It was. That was the most surprising thing of the election. Look, everyone knows where Josh stands. He's been out there in his positions, and he's been consistent. And you're going to have an attorney general that will stand up for conservative principles when the time comes, which is what we need.
I felt like I thought Chris Koster defined the office as a prosecutor. And I think Josh Hawley did a great job of redefining what it was. I mean, I thought the race was interesting because there was obviously a lot of animosity, which made for an interesting thing to watch. But it was also interesting to see 2 people that viewed the office very differently. And Josh Hawley's argument was persuasive with 2/3 of the voters.
Yeah, there's a lot of Cass County on the ticket on the Democratic side this year, which is on one hand nice to see. Josh Hawley is an energetic, dynamic young guy, 36 years old, will be the Attorney General of the state of Missouri. Happy to predict that right now.
Starts as the favorite, I would say, right?
I would think so. He is a man that has clearly unified his base. I have watched him from Butler County to Jasper County and all points in between at grassroots events. And I have seen him give a speech, and I have seen the crowd spring to their feet with an organic standing ovation. He connects very well. He's got a beautiful family. He's got a great story to tell, and he has done a great job in terms of redefining the function of the office, as well as he's going to be running against Barack Obama, and that puts Ms. Hensley at a really bad disadvantage.
Let me let's backtrack one time. I think you're right. I think Hawley has a very good shot to win. Will the groups that funded him last time fund him again? I mean, I assume that if they put that much money into a primary, there's some folks in Washington, a Federalist Society, whoever, that are committed to him. Will they re-up for the general election in the same manner?
Well, I can't speak for his donors, but I would imagine that his donors will remain his donors and will be just as committed to the general election as they were the primary.
However, I'm sure he was not thrilled with the outcome on the other side. I mean, Teresa Hensley's probably a better candidate for the Democrats to put up. The experience, being a female.
A little tougher.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Republican Lieutenant Governor, Mike Parson, one of those corrupt insiders, ended up winning the primary by a large margin. I think it was maybe a testament to his work on ag issues, right?
You know, Mike's a good old boy from Southwest Missouri, a former sheriff, connects well with Southeast, Southwest, and a lot of rural Missouri, and I suspect that he'll perform strongly there.
Jack Spooner, I'm tickled with you. It's Mike Parson is a great candidate, a very good person.
Solid.
Seems like he'll be able to give Russ Carnahan a legit fight.
Mike is a perfect type of person for that particular position. He's a stabilizing force in government. He's a constant person you can count on.
Knows the job.
And people from both sides of the aisle can come and talk to him and know that they're going to get a fair hearing, and then he'll be able to take that as a lieutenant governor should do and deal with the governor and the other statewide elected officials.
Minnie Mazer, you know Mike Parsons somewhat from being in Jefferson City. I would say he starts with an uphill climb to running against Russ Carnahan. I mean, that's a name that Missourians know and care about.
Sure, and for a down ballot statewide race, that certainly
Sure.
is starting out of the gate with a little bit of an advantage for Russ, I think. I think with regard to Senator Parson, that I don't really know him personally. I've heard from folks that they like him very much personally. He's a nice guy. I think it's going to be a question of, can he put the organization together to overcome a statewide campaign? And also, I think there are some questions with regard to the way he's handled some of his leadership in Jefferson City, such as the transparency in hearings and allowing like the media and other folks to listen in on hearings.
Mike, he probably needs a bump from the top of the ticket to overcome the Carnahan name, right?
Well, absolutely. And look, I'm one of those people who believes that the governor's office really sets the tone for the down ballot races. And if you've looked at that historically, that's been the case with the rare exception of Peter Kinder. So for the Democrats to have number 2, a guy named Carnahan with $1 billion worth of name ID, it only makes the battle for Republicans all that harder, especially with Eric Greitens as their nominee.
Let's flip the script. There's another guy on the statewide ballot named Ashcroft.
Absolutely.
He starts out with the same advantage, right?
Yeah, he does. That name ID will help him, and maybe he is probably the one Republican who may have a leg up on everybody else in the ticket and may be able to fight against some of that Greitens drag that's going to take place. But again, I tell you, I think it really follows the line of the governor's race.
I think one of the exciting things about that race, though, is Robin Smith made history the other night as the first African-American woman to be nominated by a major party for statewide office in Missouri. And I think that's pretty exciting. I do think Mr. Ashcroft starts with that name ID, of course, but he's proven that he can win primaries, but is he ready for prime time, I think?
I think, Jackson, it seems like the Ashcroft name, if I was running against, Jim Danforth or something, it would be an uphill climb, right?
I know, I have personal experience
There
in
you
that
go.
regard. It is, but Jay is his engineering background. He's very thorough in each step he takes to get to the next place. And he knows what he needs to do to win a primary, and he knows what he needs to do to win a general. When he ran in the 24th, it was a different dynamic. He's not going to have that same dynamic running statewide. And I think he'll have a plan down it. And like Ryan made a prediction, I'll predict that Jay's going to win the Secretary of State's office.
Ryan, I was impressed with the campaign Senator Krause ran. I mean, he ran really hard. It was a great campaign. Jay Ashcroft, the one thing I think people underestimate is he really worked hard. I mean, he wore this state out, going places, probably did more than he had to do to win the race, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I've never met a more hardworking candidate than Will Krause. He was tenacious, but if there was a second place, it was Jay Ashcroft. He worked incredibly hard and, of course, enjoyed huge name ID and celebrity status as he went all over the state of Missouri, and it paid off for him. He will be our next Secretary of State.
Let's talk about Eric Schmidt for a minute. He came through with no primary, enters the race with a huge cash advantage. Judy Baker won a campaign against a guy I think we'll talk about again at some point on this show, in Pat Contreras. Is Eric Schmidt somebody that a fiscal conservative, maybe they have issues with the top of the ticket, is Eric Schmidt the next person you get excited about? Is the reason you'll come to a Republican event, put up a sign, go vote?
Yeah, Eric is very likable. Democrats like him. He brings people together, and he's another consistent guy. He stands for certain principles. We've seen those play out over the years, and people can count on him to do the right thing as treasurer.
I want to thank Mike Kelly, Minnie Mazer, Jack Spooner, Ryan Johnson, all for joining us. What an election season. We hope you all come back here and talk about it in the next few weeks on This Week in Missouri Politics.